Okay, I got it. Right here. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that, remembering things.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here we go. Wilder Show podcast. I'm Scott. That's Lauren.
Hello.
Hello there. WilderShow.com is where you find us. Podcast at WilderShow.com is how you can contact us. Podcasts drop Tuesdays and Fridays at 6 a.m. Central Time on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts, and on YouTube. So thank you for like, rate, follow, subscribe, and share. We're glad you're here. New president, new day. Not really looking back so much, looking forward. The president, though, President Trump did many of the things as he promised right away, to some cheers and to some groans. I think we should probably get used to that. I think there will be cheers and groans on both sides.
They're always kind of, regardless of who's the president, aren't there cheers from one side and groans from the other?
I think so, but he tends to inspire more and more volume in each of those categories. Don't you think?
Maybe so. And also some groans from his own side, maybe, too.
Well,
there a few more groans
there is that.
From his own side.
The old thing of Rush Limbaugh, rest his soul. Rush Limbaugh, when he was alive, who was the most hated talk show host in America?
Rush Limbaugh.
Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah.
Who was the most loved talk show host in America?
Rush Limbaugh. More of everything.
We used to say, what defines divides. As we say in Texas, the only thing in the middle of the road is a yellow stripe and a dead armadillo. So you don't want to be in the middle of the road. And Trump is not obviously in the middle of the road. And not looking back too much, well, maybe one more time, as Joe Biden was leaving office, he issued some blanket pardons to people who have not been charged with anything.
Right.
Have not been convicted of a crime, have not been sentenced. It's like a legal just because bouquet. Just because.
Or like a just in case. Yeah.
A just in case.
A just in case bouquet. I might do something bad later, so
you never know.
Here are these flowers, honey.
Or maybe a just in case bouquet. But setting aside the question of how do you pardon someone who you don't believe has done anything wrong, right? These people did nothing wrong, but here's a blanket pardon over a big period of time for whatever they might have done in the future that it's determined that they did. But don't worry, you've been pardoned.
But, okay, so it's not only for things that might come out that have been done in the past, but it's for things that could still be done in the future?
I think that's probably not right. In the future, it might come out that they had done things, for example, with his son, with his family over 10 years.
But so
it goes back 10 years. And I was watching Rachel Maddow and some of the coverage about all this, and they were having these same people, and they've done it on the right too, where the same people are debating themselves. It takes Rachel Maddow when Donald Trump was leaving office, and the great fear was he's going to pardon everybody. He's going to pardon himself, and that would be so wrong. It would set a horrible precedent. We have to stand against it. Even President Biden at the time said, no, that's wrong. It would set the wrong precedent if somebody did that. And then it flashes forward to today where they worried about Trump doing it. Trump didn't do it. We haven't done anything wrong. I'm not going to pardon my family, not pardon myself. Mm-hmm. And now you have Joe Biden who's issued these pardons. And it's like, I think it does set a bad precedent that we have to go down this road where, okay, well, they did that. Well, we're going to do this. They did that. So Trump now pardons 1,500 people that were part of the January 6th thing. It just gets into
he did that because
I don't
Joe
know.
Biden pardoned a bunch of people, or would he have?
I think the door is open now. It's like, oh, well, just in case in the future, maybe I'll pardon all of my friends and all my family, and that way they're all covered. It's just it does set a bad precedent, and it seems to me, we could talk to Kelly Shackelford about this at some point. it seems to me, and I know the pardon, it's sort of it's a sacred thing, the right that a president has to pardon, but it just seems to me that when I think of a pardon, I think a guy is in jail, it's a nonviolent offense or whatever, and they decide, we're going to pardon you. It's a little bit of grace for you. You served 12 of your 30 years, and yes, you were convicted, and you always thought you were innocent, but we're going to just you're gone. You're free. That's completely different from somebody who's not been charged with anything, somebody who has not been tried for anything, not been convicted, not being sentenced for anything. And we're just going to say, just in case the next guy or gal at some point is going to go after my friends, I'm going to make sure they all have a blanket pardon. It's like the Willy Wonka golden ticket for people who didn't even enter the contest. Sort of.
I think I see where you're going.
Then, of course, that leads to, Trump, President Trump, what he's already done, the pardons, the commutations, the dismissals for January 6th, folks. I just don't think I have, honestly, much energy for all of the but whatabouts.
I know I don't.
That we're going to have. If Trump does something that gets criticism, the right is going to say about that, but what about when Biden did? And if the right is critical of the Biden's waning days activities, then the left is going to shout, but what about something that Trump is doing? It's just exhausting. Dealing with the warring, it's like dealing with warring children in the back seat and also trying to drive.
Okay, that you kind of have to do. If you've got warring children in the back seat and they're yours and you're driving, you kind of have to pay attention to that. What would you suggest? How do you stay above the fray, pay attention to the important stuff, but not get bogged down by the but whatabouts?
In my view, unless there's something else that comes up, I don't have lots of ideas of looking back at the Biden years. I want to just move forward. And I think that's part of it. For me last time, when President Biden won, and I've seen so much stuff, and I've posted very little stuff. I think very little stuff that is, frankly, we've said stuff in the podcast, but I've really posted very little stuff that is, divisive. But I've seen some reactions like, dude, really? Who has the energy to... I don't even want to respond to some of it because I don't have the energy to go back and forth. I cannot go 3-4 layers deep with some long thread with, we're both in our, jammies, type of hammering stuff out to each other. I don't have the energy for that. So I would say part of it is to look forward, not to look back.
Yeah. To
know that President Trump is going to do some things that are going to make, obviously, everything he does is going to make people on the left crazy, just as President Biden, most everything he did made people on the right crazy. But I think the thing to do is just to don't, like Bill Maher said, don't let it own your brain. Don't give him your brain. Don't give either side your brain. It's the kind of thing that caused me to completely check out and go to court TV for a couple of years and not even watch, listen, now, now 2 years later, I see things on, went to court TV for really a couple of years. And it wasn't because I just didn't want to fight about it anymore. I just did not want to fight and argue and wrangle. And I saw people that did it and I just didn't want to do it. I'd done it for so long. It wasn't really interesting to me to do for fun. It's one thing to do it for your job.
Yeah.
But to do it just because you really
for sport,
to get a giggle out of doing it, it wasn't what I wanted to do. And now I watch Dateline and 2020 and 48 Hours, and I'm seeing the cases that I watched the entire trial. So I'm seeing a
so you're an expert already.
A 2-hour condensing. It's like, yeah, I know what happened. We'll watch it anyway, but I know what happened there. I know what's going on there. Anyway, so I think, do what's right. This sounds really, I don't know what it sounds like. Do what's right for your mental health.
That's a good word.
It is so easy to dive into it. And I just don't want people to look back and think, man, I really gave myself to that. I gave myself to the hate of Biden, or I gave myself to the hate of Trump, or what. It's not worth it. You got honestly, you got more important things in your life than the person you're never going to meet. The country's going to be okay. We have survived worse presidents than Joe Biden. We will survive worse presidents than Donald Trump. Now, if you are on the group that says he's horrible, it's okay. The country's going to be okay. And it doesn't mean we don't care. We care. I care deeply. The things that party believes are priorities are things that I more likely agree with than if it were the other way around. But I don't have illusions about it. I don't have ideas of grandeur about it.
I'm not sure what you mean.
The choice was between two people. It was going to be either President Harris and all that she would bring, or President Trump and all that he is bringing. That's it. And people that went for one side, it doesn't mean they agree with everything and they hate everything on the other side and they agree with everything on their side.
Yeah. It just means you don't have to have been voting for the next Messiah, basically. No. You don't have to believe that the person you voted for
can do no wrong.
Exactly.
I mean, I think there are already people. I mean, look at some of the people right now, even in the first week, that disagree with some of the things about the dismissal of the cases and the commutations and the pardons, and it shouldn't be for violent offenders. I think most people would probably agree with that. President Trump just decided, blanket, I'm going to do it for all of them. And he did. And he promised to do it, and that's what he did, and people are going to disagree, and I understand. But talk about whatabouts. I mean, Joe Biden, he commuted sentence. He pardoned guys that actually brutally murdered law enforcement officers. Those guys, in fact, there were a couple of guys, I can't remember the names. You can look them up, but it's true. A couple of guys that when it came to pardons that Barack Obama could have made in his final days, he was advised about these two guys, don't pardon them. They were involved in a brutal murder of law enforcement. Do not pardon them. And he didn't, to his credit. When it was Joe Biden's turn to get through, Joe Biden folks that were in charge of advising Joe Biden on who he should and should not pardon said again to him what was said to Barack Obama, don't pardon these guys.
Right.
These guys brutally murdered law enforcement. Do not pardon these guys. He did. So when we're going to get into the whole thing of somebody shoved some law enforcement officer on the J6 thing, it just, once you get into this tit for tat thing, man, it's never ending. I tell you one thing Biden did, you tell me something that Trump, and they go back and forth, and nothing changes, except our blood pressure goes way up. We end up hating each other.
That's true.
The people you should have spent time with, instead of arguing with some person you will never meet in real life, hopefully, for both of you. You gave that time, you gave yourself to that time instead of the people that you're connected to. I would just say, do what's right for your mental health. You are trading yourself and your time for something. Just make it something that's worth it. And I don't believe some of these things, for most of us, are worth it. But if it is, then go with
Sure.
God. I mean, if that's what you're led to do, man, do it. But I don't want you to look back. I don't want to look back and think, you know what, golly, that was not probably. I should have probably done something different with that time. I don't think it's worth it. Figure out how you can make a difference, and if you can't make a difference out there, make a difference in here. With the people that actually, call you dad or share the last name or call you mom or call you friend or daughter or mom or whatever. Those are the people that matter, not the people out there that are just, and I include myself in this, just idiots talking about stuff that sometimes they know about, sometimes they don't, but they're all full of vim and vigor and they're full of themselves and they're so blasted right or left and right. Correct on the left or correct on the right. I spend a long time doing that, and I don't Not only do I not want to do that anymore like I did before, I don't want other people to do it.
Yeah.
Just because for you, not for me. I can listen. We can go toe to toe, man. We can go back and forth. I'm as good once as I ever was. I can still go around. What do they say? This old truck still has a couple of good runs in it. I can still bring it. I just don't. I'm not sure it's worth it, and I don't want to make enemies for no good reason. And I think sometimes this stuff can be for no good reason. So that's all. It's do what's right for your mental health, but mainly keep your eye on the ball, and somebody's Facebook idea of what's right and wrong for Joe Biden or Donald Trump, a guy you don't know, a guy you don't care about, and if you did meet him, you wouldn't care about him anyway. I don't think that's worth you. I'd say just decide what's worth trading yourself and your family time for, and then be ready to live with it, whatever that is. You live with it. You make your choice. You live with it. That's what I think about that. And scattershoot's coming up, but before that, how about the snow?
I know. In lots of places that really rarely see snow.
You know how I knew it was snow on the beach on the Texas Gulf Coast?
How did you know?
Because the beach looked white.
Oh.
we don't have
that's not really white sand.
We don't have Gulf Shores sand on the Texas Gulf Coast.
Yeah.
But I saw that New Orleans had 10 inches.
It did.
Pensacola had 5 inches. So crazy. We were talking to somebody about our memories as kids of snow. And when I was at Adele Turner Elementary School, the Turner Tigers, thank you very much. I played football, I want you to know, for the Turner Tigers.
You said that was middle school?
No, it was grade school.
It was grade.
I was I don't want to brag about it, but I was kind of a thing.
Kind of a big deal.
I was a standout, Nobody in 5th grade could did cover 3 like I did for the defense. Anyway, we had snow days there. Del Turner was over here, and the junior high was up here. And the junior high had a football field. And then on the side of the football field, about the 30, 40-yard line, along the side, there's big drop-off down to the grounds of the elementary school. So it was right next to each other. And when there was a snow day, sometimes some people would borrow the cafeteria trays, the things that you get
to use
your sled.
As a sled?
That would be your sled. So you would take the cafeteria tray and you would take it out. If one borrowed a cafeteria tray, one would take it out and use it as a sled, and you'd run down the hill and fall down on top of it. It was great. It was a great time.
Sounds incredibly dangerous.
Foolish, of course, but we were young, so nothing bad could happen to us because we were young. I mean, nothing bad happens, right? Nobody gets hurt when they're young. So, so snow everywhere. And then we'll go back to, normal at some point. But, here in Texas, a lot of this stuff was south, which is really odd to have the snow be Austin down to Houston and below, or, more southern. But, the Dallas area.
Not getting it.
Yeah, not so bad, which I like. I mean, anybody can have the ice and all that. But anyway, so it's winter time. Hey, listen, you don't want to complain about the cold because summer is coming. And
summer is coming, and when she comes to stay for a very long time.
She does. And so I would just say, enjoy to the extent you can. Enjoy it when it's cool. Enjoy it when it's warm. Do what you can. Stay warm. Dress for it when you're in the winter time, and then, do what you can in the summertime. So, okay. So Scattershoot is coming up. And remember, you can find us at wildershow.com. We'll take your voicemails there, too. If you go to wildershow.com, you'll sort of click and give us a voicemail, a comment or a show topic or your hopes and fears for the next 4 years. I didn't mean to rhyme. Podcast at wildershow.com is the email address. Podcast drop Tuesdays and Fridays at 6 a.m. Central Time on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, also YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. So like, rate, follow, subscribe, and share. And Scattershoot is coming up. Scattershoot, one of my favorite times. It's like Oprah and was it My Favorite Things?
Yeah.
From Oprah. Okay, it's nothing like
Oprah.
It's
not like that at all. Actually.
It's not like that at all. We can edit all this out before it airs. Scattershoot, Scott and Lauren with Scattershoot Wilder Show, and thanks for being with the podcast. But thanks, by the way, for telling a friend. We want it to grow, right? We want it to grow, and the way it grows is for you to tell a friend, or share it, or like it, or rate it, or subscribe, and all those things. Mainly listen to it, and then just tell a friend about it. But we're glad you're here for Scattershoot.
Do you remember a conversation that you and I had a while back? I don't believe that we had it on the podcast, but it was the first time I'd ever heard the term, that I'd ever heard a television show described as a single screen show.
Hold on a second. You said a single screen show.
A single screen show.
What does that mean, screen show?
Okay, so in this case, what it means is you can really only watch that one thing. And in this case,
why would you be watching two things? I don't know.
Because that's what we do now.
Oh, you mean like on your devices?
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Because we might be doing, watching more than one. I mean, more than two things.
You're playing something on one, or you're looking at flipping through Instagram while you're, quote, watching.
Exactly.
Okay, so they're saying what?
Well, so I'd heard the show. There was a show maybe last fall on Netflix called Ripley, and it was described as a single screen show.
Can I interpret for a second? Does that mean you have to pay attention to this? You're going to miss stuff if you don't watch it. You can't be walking through the room and then you catch the audio. You're going to sit and you're going to watch it. That's what it's meant. And it seems to me that's a higher bar, isn't it?
It is
to
a higher
create
bar.
Things like that.
Yeah.
All right.
And in this case, that's exactly right. There were entire episodes of Ripley where there was very little dialogue. Everything that happened, the whole, everything that moved the story along. Were things that were only happening on the screen with
somebody's mood or their facial.
At all. Or, moving, accomplishing tasks, tasks that were very important to the telling of the story. So, single screen show. I'm sure I'm way behind, but I had never even known that was a thing, that there was a word for that until just last fall. But now there are these rumors suggesting that that Netflix is asking for rewrites on some shows that aren't second screen enough. Now, what that means is if a viewer's primary screen is their phone, which is what they're assuming, they shouldn't be so challenged by the Netflix show on their secondary screen that they turn the show off. So it's got to be something that they can still look at their phone but follow what's going on. Okay. Because if they decide this is too complicated for me, I'm not even paying attention to that, and they turn it off and just go back to Instagram or X or whatever.
All right, let me ask you this. It's not really that Netflix wants us to watch the show. They just want the show to be on to get the ratings.
They just want you to leave it on.
Just leave it on. So that seems like that's not. I just saw a thing, I think this week, that said Netflix stock went crazy good this week because they just went over 300 million subscribers.
They did. So I don't know. Maybe they're getting better at this. What this might mean. Less complicated storylines, more descriptive language. So you might notice you're watching a show and the people are, while they're doing whatever it is they're doing, they're talking about what they're doing. So it's okay if you're not seeing what they're doing because they're telling you what they're doing. All I could think about when I read this is that, didn't people used to call the television the idiot box?
Idiot box, the boob tube, the boob tube,
Now we're dumbing it down even more. But the reason that they're dumbing it down even more is pretty indicting too. So this was from a piece in The Guardian, and Ralph Jones, who wrote it, you couldn't actually find anyone who would admit to being asked by Netflix to dumb down their scripts. But there's this guy, James Hamilton, who's a writer on a couple of Netflix animated series. And he said that he thinks it's okay to be mindful of how social media has mashed everyone's attention spans to a pulp. He says we'd be lying to ourselves if we didn't admit that most of us find it hard to put our phones down when the TV is on. And I find that for myself. I mean that if I'm watching something, even I'm very conscious of going to pick up my phone to have something else to pay attention to. We get distracted very easily. But he doesn't think that they're actually looking for ways to get us to pay less attention to the things that they're producing.
Well, I mean, this guy also does cartoons. I mean, so he's not he does stuff with maybe the target audience there would be even younger, where they would be more likely to. He's not doing high drama,
right?
He isn't, unless it's adult animation. But he works for an animated series,
right? I think he was commenting mostly on as someone who was on the inside at Netflix. Yeah. Might not be his job to be writing those the high concept pieces, but he knows. And that's another thing he said. Actually, Netflix. It is. There are so many things that you can watch there, and some of them really might cater to the more casual viewer who wants to have something on in the background while they walk around the house, get the laundry done, things like that, or scroll on their phone. But then there are other things, of course, that are for the more seasoned viewer, the more serious viewer.
I think I'm in that category. I'm in the second category. When I'm enjoying something, now I say that, but at the same time, sometimes I will have stuff on and I will listen to it while I'm driving.
Yeah.
And I know that you can't do that, but
you're going to miss stuff.
Well, so here's the thing: when you watch, let's say, a football game, let's say baseball, because baseball is a better example, I think, than that. When I grew up listening to baseball on the radio, and baseball was on, but my dad listened to baseball on the radio, and we'd mow the yard or whatever, go outside, have a glass of iced tea, and have But
when baseball was on the radio, the way that it was, that the game was called was very specific to radio, right? They knew you weren't able to see what was going on.
But this is my point. If what you're saying is on the video, they're going to say, rewrite the story so that you're kind of telling what it is you're doing.
Yeah.
It would be like having a radio broadcast of a sporting event while I'm watching the sporting event. I don't need to hear about going left to right. I'm watching it.
Right.
I know they're going left to right. I'm seeing all those things. The point of a video narrative, play-by-play in color, is not to tell you all the things that you are not seeing because you cannot see it. It's to enhance the things that you are seeing with other details. When it's audio only, they're trying to paint the picture so you can see it in your head, moving from our left to our right. We're now right running up. Okay, you're explaining it so you see it in your head, but you don't have that kind of narrative that you have when you don't have video.
Yeah.
When you have the video, and what I hear you saying is, it's a very counselor way to say it. What I hear you saying, Lauren, is what I hear you saying is that they are shooting to say, look, they're busy, they're playing Candy Crush or whatever it's called, and they also, so just tell them what you're doing while you're also doing it on the screen. I think it's a bad idea. I don't think that's a good idea, but what do I know? I mean, Netflix has 300 million subscribers, and they're doing something right. But you could say, well, but they've been doing something right, so maybe they shouldn't seek for a dumber audience. We need more third grade mentality people to subscribe. Everybody's subscribing.
Yeah, and I guess maybe it's like a chicken and egg thing. I don't know if they're really considering themselves, if they're the ones who've made us dumb, or if we've gotten dumb because of other things.
Yeah, I think so.
And now they're trying to make sure they don't lose us since we've lost a few moments of our attention spans.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. We had a conversation about this topic, and I'm going to dive into it. You know who Paul Schrader is?
He's a director, isn't he?
He has directed. He's also an Academy Award nominee writer. He wrote Raging Bull.
Okay.
He wrote probably best known for Taxi Driver.
All right.
He wrote American Gigolo.
Okay.
He wrote something called First Reformed.
Oh, that's kind of recent.
It is.
I didn't see that, but I remember.
Well, he was nominated for an Academy Award, lost the category, but he was nominated for that. And he's written some others. Paul Schrader, he has drawn a lot of attention because he wrote something on his Instagram that I'm going to share with you, and then it will open up a bit of a conversation. Here's what he wrote. Let me get my spectacles. These are all caps. Mm-hmm. I'm stunned. I just asked ChatGPT for, quote, an idea for Paul Schrader film, end quote. Then Paul Thomas Anderson. Then Quentin Tarantino. Then Harmony, is it Corrine? Harmony Korine. Then Ingmar Bergman. Then Rossellini, Lang, Scorsese, Murnau, Capra, Ford, Spielberg, Lynch. This is all still his quote. Every idea ChatGPT, so AI, came up with in a few seconds was good and original and fleshed out. Why should writers sit around for months searching for a good idea when AI can provide one in seconds? Now, this is a guy who does it for a living. Mm-hmm. And we've talked before about AI and is it a tool and how do you use it and what about the olden times and we don't want to replace all the writers and the artists and all this kind of stuff. And I understand that. So let me finish his thought. We're going to dive into a bit of a thought about it. He said, AI, I've just come to realize AI is smarter than I am, has better ideas, has more efficient ways to execute them. Then he writes, this is an existential moment akin to what Kasparov felt in 1997 when he realized Deep Blue was going to beat him at chess. Remember that?
I do.
Kasparov was beaten at chess. So somebody writes in response to that, it says, what brought you to this conclusion, Paul? And he says, I asked it for Paul Schrader script ideas. It had better ones than mine. He said, I just sent ChatGPT a script I'd written some years ago and asked for some improvements. In 5 seconds, it responded with notes, this is a quote, with notes as good or better than I've received from a film executive. Okay, that's the end of the exchange. But isn't that interesting? And I think that there is a reckoning, I think, coming. It is not whether it's going to be used, but how it's going to be used. To maybe it comes up with an idea. Maybe you feed, as Schrader says, I fed a script to it, and it came back with better notes than any film executive I've ever worked with. This guy's Academy Award nominated writer. So I just think it's interesting to all things AI. I kind of pay attention to right now, and it gets my attention because it's new, and there will be a day when it's not new anymore, and it's going to be whatever it's going to be. And I don't think it's ever going to replace some of the things that people probably have a fear. Like if it comes in at all, it's going to replace everything. I don't think so. But
humans, I think they're worried it's going to replace.
Some things
even
do
he
replace
just said,
humans.
why should writers sit around trying to come up with lesser ideas? Well, because it's the way a lot of people make a living, for one thing.
But the obligation of a person putting out the final product is not to make sure those people have a job. It's to put out the best product that they can. And if there's a way to do something more efficiently than we did it before, and it's as good or better than it was before, that's why robots build cars now. We don't have humans, Ruby the Riveter or what her name was. That's not happening anymore. Rosie. And we have, I think we have to come to some understanding that this is the way it's going to be. We're going to have to, figure out how to, to coexist with our AI counterparts.
Do we know still that, and I'm only halfway joking, that Paul Schrader is still safe, or is he in an underground bunker
That's a good point.
somewhere. I'd be worried that people would be coming for him with
pitchfork and torches.
Yeah.
I think the thing is, while they come for you with pitchforks and torches early on, those comments early on, I think, end up being prescient. I think you later it becomes just, well, of course, when Paul Schrader said it, they were trying to chase him with tar and feathers, but really we've all come to find out, he's really right about that. We got to find a way to do this. Maybe we harness it in a way. You're not going to stop the technology. The technology is going to be the technology. It's going to be out there. So the question is, how do we use it? When do we use it? Is there going to be? Do you limit people's ability to use it? And if you do, it's like saying, we want the people that lift the weights the best and have the prettiest, happy, big muscles. But nobody can use steroids. So some people use steroids because they get the bigger muscles. And so will people just say, well, I'm going to use it even though I'm not supposed to? I don't think you can. My point is, I don't think you can limit it and say, you can't use this. We have to find a way that is maybe an industry standard. If you're going to be part of the academy, whatever, it has to be this, that. Well, they already have limits on that. You have to have a certain number of people that are this or that, different categories of people, or you don't get nominated for something. Maybe there's a way to do that. I don't know how you police it, though.
Well, pretty soon if we're going to let AI write all of our movie scripts, then do we really need to even teach our kids how to write? I mean, do they have to really write reports anymore and research papers and things for school, or can they not just have Chat GPT write all of their papers?
Well,
where does it?
I think that's a good point.
Stop?
But I do think that in school we are learning to learn. We're not learning.
Yeah, but how much do we? Why do we even have to learn if we're gonna just ask AI to do it for us? What do I need to learn?
Well, do they? And I don't know the answer to this. I'm not suggesting the answer is one thing or the other. Do they still teach long division anymore? Do you do that thing with the little box and it goes in? A 7 goes into 49, and you do the thing and you put the long division.
Or do they hand them trigonometry and calculus?
But do they hand them a calculator and say,
no,
here's your thing?
No. They don't.
Okay, I really don't.
It might not look the way we used to do it, but no, they don't just hand them.
The way I used to do it, we had an abacus, and you moved the top row, all the way over, and the second row.
You etched on the side of the cave with with pieces of stick that you'd stuck in the fire
That was art class. We're talking about math.
I'm sorry.
So, so AI, it's interesting, and we've kind of gone not round and round, but I think it is interesting to. I didn't look for this, by the way. I mean, it showed up. I think it was a thing on Drudge, and it was like, Paul Schrader, nominee, blah blah blah. He's taking heat for. And I thought, I want to see what that is.
And it's entirely possible, too, and I'm really not just trying to be a naysayer. What Paul Schrader says, it came up with a better idea than I ever had, and it gave me notes better than any. I mean, that might, who knows, if somebody else took a look at that, they might say, that's not better than anything you ever wrote. I mean, it's all subjective.
Yeah, it is, but it is, it's like an expert witness in a trial. This guy is experienced. He has written award-winning movies. Raging Bull, as I recall, Raging Bull. He didn't win the screenplay, but the movie was, as I recall, an Academy Award-winning movie.
I think you're right.
So this is a guy. It's not just some guy who. Well, I mean, by the way, A&I can write better stuff than me too, but I'm not. I don't have the cred that this guy has. So he's not just some guy. I mean, he's a guy whose opinion really matters. Like you would. What do they say in trials? I should know from my days watching court TV.
You should.
To a degree of medical certainty, to a degree of scientific certainty, to a degree of Academy Award-winning certainty. Can you say that it was better? And he would say, yes, I can. So that's just it's an AI update, and I wanted to share it.
Thank you. Guide dogs.
What do you know about... For seeing eye dogs?
Seeing eye dogs.
Okay.
Yeah, really, we see a lot of dogs, support, emotional support. I mean, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about real guide dogs.
They're not the ones we see on the planes. Look, just to be clear, so we can get perfect communication. Someone who's blind and has a dog that they need to do things, or they're maybe incapacitated in some other way, and they need a guide dog. That's the kind of dog you're talking about.
A dog who's going to have the life of a human in his paws.
Because
Basically,
of the job.
They're really depending on that dog to keep them safe, to keep them alive as they go about their tasks during the day. Do you know much about what it takes to train a guide dog? I mean, I know it's really serious business. I had no idea how much it costs.
No, I would say probably the cost is certainly in the five figures. I would guess it's got to be in the five figures to, and I would say probably it's probably over $25,000. I would guess somewhere in the $30,000 range, because it's intense and it can be life and death.
Sure.
So tell me what it involves, but tell me what it costs.
Well, I was actually reading, the thing that grabbed my attention was it's a story about guide dog dropouts. They don't like to use the F word, failure. They don't like to say they're guide dog failures. But that is kind of what it is. First of all, it can be as much as $60,000 to properly train a guide dog. For the first 7 weeks, the dogs live at school where they are socialized by professional trainers. For the first 7 weeks.
Oh, 7 weeks. Okay.
Yeah. For the first 7 weeks, they live like in a school
all together.
setting.
Right. Got it.
They get introduced to street sounds, other animals, people, all kinds of sensory experiences. From there, the puppies are sent to live with volunteers for a year. So it might be like a volunteer family. There they learn basic obedience. Then they go back to school for 4 months of intensive training. They learn how to lead people from point A to B, how to stop at curbs, stairs, how to face obstacles like tree limbs, detect changes in elevation. During this time, they live on a campus with dog roommates. They go on field trips. So if they're going to be a city dog, they have to learn how to ride the subway. I've seen pictures of this on Instagram. I'm never really sure if it's real. They go to the theater, have to sit through a show because their person
Amazing.
might want to do that,
show,
and
yeah,
they have to know how to do that. They get it's kind of like dog college. They get new teachers, meet their classmates, things like that. But they can be booted out, as you might imagine, for a number of reasons: health problems, lack of confidence, distractibility. Not walking or going to the bathroom in the right places. Listen to this one: having an underbite. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. Barking at bearded men, being too high maintenance. Many, many more things are on that list. Less than 5% of dogs, it turns out, are really cut out for service work, and a bunch of them wash out during training. Get dropped like in the middle of training, like about 50%. Actually, the attrition rate is higher than most colleges. And companies, because people's lives depend on these dogs making the right decisions.
All right. I have I think the perfect comparison.
What's that?
These are it's like Navy SEAL training for dogs. They have to ring out. They ring the bell 3 times if they want to give up there at the beginning of Hell Week. But it's very much like, I know of this a little bit.
Yeah, you do.
Those that make it through, it's a very small percentage. And it doesn't include underbite problems, but very, very few make it through. But it sounds like this is there's a huge winnowing that takes place, and maybe they can get rid of. I say get rid of. Maybe they can weed them out before it costs so much money, right? Because just like in Navy, if you go to BUDS, basic underwater demolition SEAL training, if you go to BUDS, you go to Hell Week and all that, you're gonna, the government puts a lot of money in you,
right? For sure.
And then ultimately, if you make it, you're an asset for the federal government, for tip of the spear. In the same way with these dogs, I guess before they have put all the money in, they can decide this one is not going to make it for whatever reason.
Right.
Still a good dog.
Oh,
It'd
yeah.
still be a great dog.
Well,
It'd be
they
great,
call
but they
them-
just can't do that one thing.
They call them a lot of times career change dogs because they're still set up.
okay.
They might be able to be an alert dog.
There you go.
Someone who has an alert dog might be somebody who has diabetes,
Got
and
it.
dogs can be trained to
got it.
smell the changes in their
yep,
owner's body composition to know
Amazing.
when their sugar is too low or too
grief.
high. You know, there are dogs that are trained to know when their owner is about to have a seizure. So there are still, these dogs.
Great value. It doesn't mean that because they can't do that one thing
they're
doesn't
not
mean they're not
washed up.
valuable. No. Yeah,
Exactly.
But still,
Exactly.
it's a lot of money, and very few dogs make it.
That's exactly right. Let me tell you a little bit about the underbite. And there might actually be something like this that would, something similar that would disqualify someone from being a Navy SEAL. It's just not an underbite. So an underbite could mean other dental problems or surgery in the future. And that would mean that the dog would just have too many sick days. And you can't have that many sick days.
No,
you
you
got to be
can't do
ready
that.
to work every day. It is serious business.
Because you are an extension of the person.
That's right.
So your sick days or whatever goes with the person.
They can't just bring in a sub
No.
for you on those days.
Got it.
It's a real special relationship between the person and the dog,
Fascinating.
and they got to find those things that might cause problems down the road. And something like an underbite could be that.
Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And you said 60,000.
60,000, as much as 60,000.
Unbelievable.
I know.
I have a red dye. Before we go, I have red dye follow up. We talked about red dye
red
3.
dye 3.
Red dye 3. We said red dye number 3. It's red dye 3. What contains red dye 3? So we talked about some of the things, but I found some other things.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you the good news
Like
is
more
at the end.
more food.
Yeah, well, things that we
Okay.
might like. Now, remember, red dye number 3, it's all going away in 2 years. So they're giving you advance warnings so that you can buy all the stuff that contains red dye now and house it
That's
to
not
have
fun.
it for the years to come. Or to just know you don't want to get it. And for the companies to have time to change it so that Big Red or whatever it is, I'm not sure, Big Red, I think red, that may be red number 40, so it's not the same thing. But whatever the drink is, we'll be able to have some semblance of that color in the future. So the things what contains red dye 3? I was surprised to find cotton candy.
Oh,
Cotton candy has
yeah.
red dye 3. Vegan meats is in quote, vegan meats, to make it
look like meat.
make it look like meat, but also sausages and hot dogs
Number 3.
contain number
red dye
3.
3.
Maraschino cherries have red dye 3.
I think I'd heard that. Now, but I mean, go back to hot dogs for a second. All hot dog. I mean,
No,
there have to be some brands
yes.
that you
Oh,
just
sure.
have to be. You just
No,
have
that's
to be
right. You have to check it
vigilant
out. Check it out, yeah.
in label reading.
Right. Maraschino cherries. Pez has red dye 3. Brock's Valentine's candy hearts.
Yeah, I read about that.
The little I
saw
love you
that on the
hearts,
list.
or you're cool, or
Yeah.
hug me, or whatever.
Text me.
Lifesavers wild cherry.
No,
I know you're a wild cherry
I
lifesavers person.
love the wild cherry
well, you
lifesavers.
stock up. You got 2 more
Well,
years
I don't
to get
love them because they have
No, I know, but
red
you want.
dye
I know.
3.
Now let me tell you the good news. It's not in Twizzlers,
Oh, that's good.
and it's not in Jolly Ranchers.
Okay, and
That
not
really
in
surprised me.
Swedish
And-
Swedish fish.
Swedish fish.
I never had so much trouble saying Swedish fish until I tried to say it in front of a microphone.
Mm-hmm.
Never had a hard time.
I know people are longing for this kind of trivia. When I was first mine, not yours. They long for yours, mine
They
not
love
as much.
mine, right?
When I was on the radio, first job ever was back when there was Piggly Wiggly.
Uh-huh.
And for whatever reason, I could not say Piggly Wiggly. I don't know why. It would come out in...
You mean as a kid?
No, I
Or
mean when I was on the radio. And so I would have to find a way to try and say Piggly Wiggly.
Okay.
And I don't know, I would add a syllable or something. Something was wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was solved, but that was one of the words that I had trouble
Piggly
with.
Wiggly.
I know, it's nothing, and now it went away.
Yeah.
or for the most part, it's still in some parts of the country, I think. Anyway, Piggly Wiggly was my Swedish fish.
You meant Piggly Wiggly's went away. I thought you meant your inability to say it.
No, I still have it.
Now.
I still have the problem. I just corrected it. AI corrected it. So, all right. That's Gutter Shoot. WilderShow.com is the where to find us. You can leave us a voicemail. We hope you will. And, your hopes and fears the next 4 years or whatever you want to leave us. Podcast at WilderShow.com is how you contact us. If you want to type us a note, hammer out a criticism. Happy to read it. Podcast drop Tuesdays and Fridays, 6 a.m. Central Time on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeart, Amazon, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Like, rate, follow, subscribe, and share. We'll see you next time.
Do 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 do